What's up, a Cinema Shogun here, and at the time of this recording, it's been about 24 hours since the contents, or at least some of the contents of Brian Laundrie's notebook have been released to the public. Now, one thing that I do want to point out is that this was just a few pages from his notebook that we got to see. There's a huge possibility that there is plenty of other stuff in this notebook. Maybe it pertains to Gabby, maybe it doesn't. However, we only saw a few pages of this notebook. So that's something that I wanted to bring up early on in this video, because who knows what else is in this notebook. But it's been about 24 hours and I'm still trying to process all of it. It was a lot of information to receive on a random Friday, unexpectedly, just when you thought that we were reaching a point where we may never get any more information from this case again. Don't get me wrong, Gabby Petito's family, they're filing a lawsuit. They're trying to seek a jury trial, but we're not sure if that's going to work out for them or not. In fact, a lot of experts say that it's not looking good for the Petitos, that they believe that this trial will not wind up happening. I'm keeping faith, just like I've kept faith this entire time, that we will eventually get to the bottom of a lot of this. I have been covering this story, basically since the beginning, and I have chosen to stay on top of it. I know a lot of people who covered this story, they moved on, and don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with that. And I've moved on to covering tons of other stories as well. But I always kept my eye on this story because I was deeply connected to this story, and I feel as if I never got the closure I wanted. I know Gabby's family definitely didn't get the closure that they needed. And I know a lot of you all out there still wanted answers to these questions. And yesterday we got a lot of answers, but the answers we got really just raised more questions, if you ask me. And the explanation that Brian supposedly gave, listen, I'm not fully convinced that Brian actually wrote this. However, I'm not saying that he didn't write it. I want you all to understand, I'm not sitting here trying to tell you all Brian didn't write this. I'm saying I'm not convinced that he did. I'm kind of struggling within myself, really trying to figure out what I really believe here as far as this notebook goes. Because one half of me believes that Brian didn't write this. Some of the way the things were worded in the letter, it just made me feel like, maybe Brian's parents, maybe Roberta wrote this. But then the other half of me, it's like, I don't know Roberta. I don't know Brian Laundrie. I don't know his parents, obviously. But part of me believes, like, Roberta would have been a little bit smarter than this, maybe. I think with age comes wisdom, all right? I know a lot of young people these days, they dismiss everything that old people say because they just say, oh, you're old, you don't know how times are these days. But in reality, with age comes wisdom. And I just believe that maybe Roberta would have been smarter or would have came up with a different reasoning behind why Brian supposedly killed Gabby if she were to write it. It comes across like something that was written or wrote by like a young, stupid idiot. Like, I can't fathom someone over the age of 9 writing this and thinking that this is a good alibi. So that's why it leads me to, I kind of lean towards maybe Brian did write this. Because this comes across as something that someone young and dumb and maybe taking some drugs, I don't know, would write. So I try to give Roberta the benefit of the doubt in saying that maybe she didn't write this. However, a lot of other information came out besides just this letter. Because supposedly, there were other confessions from Brian. Not just one, but supposedly there are 2 more confessions from Brian. I believe another one was written down and another one is on a digital device. So I guess he typed out a confession. And supposedly those confessions don't line up with this confession. That's where I really start wondering. Because yeah, we could all assume that Brian changed his story around, right? We could all assume, hey, you know, Brian changed his story up. Often, people who lie, people who commit crimes, their story changes over time, right? I think we all know that by now. There's plenty of examples of that. However, what crossed my mind is this. What if one of these other confessions by Brian is really Brian's confession? However, this notebook is really something that was written by someone else, not necessarily knowing that a digital confession existed. We don't know for sure if Roberta and Chris knew about these confessions. And it was said by Gabby's lawyer that even Bertolino was surprised by some of the evidence he went to pick up yesterday. One piece of that evidence was a note that was written from Roberta Laundrie to Brian. We do not know the contents of that note yet. All we know is that there were some offers to help Brian within that note. And we know on the outside of the envelope, it said burn after reading. So Roberta wanted Brian Laundrie to burn this note so there would be no evidence that this note existed. However, obviously, it didn't get burnt, and it was in the FBI's possession, but now it's in Bertolino's possession. But Bertolino seemed to be surprised when he picked it up. At least that's what Gabby lawyer says. Now, what we need to do is eventually we need to see that letter, and we need to compare that handwriting to the handwriting in Brian Laundrie's notebook. So I'm hoping that we don't get a transcript of what was written in that letter, and we get actual photos of that letter, how we got photos of Brian Laundrie's notebook. You know, I have a transcript of everything Brian Laundrie said in the pages that were released from his notebook, so it's easier to read for us, but we also have pictures of the actual notebook pages. So I would want pictures of this actual letter because I want to compare the handwriting. And like I said, I think a lot of people will go off the belief that, oh, you know, Brian's just untrustworthy. He wrote these different, you know, alibis down, these different confessions, and it changed over time. However, I think maybe someone came up with one confession and someone came up with the other. I don't understand why there would be a need for 3 different confessions. I understand that maybe there would be one written on paper and one on a digital device. So just in case no one ever finds this note, you have another, you know, example of it. But if those are different, you know what I mean? Like, if they're different, then that's kind of weird to me. Because why would you tell one story and bring this note with you before, you know, as you go to take your own life, and you have this note with you? Why would the note that you leave behind digitally be different? Like you've already, like whatever. All right, this is what I'm trying to get at. The note that Brian Laundrie, the notebook that Brian Laundrie had on him out there when they found his body, that had to be, considering if there is, you know, multiple confessions, that had to be his final draft, his final story, right? If you're counting on people finding your body and finding this letter or these notes in your notebook, then obviously this is the final story you're going with. You're going out here to commit your final act, which is taking yourself, you know, out of the game. Let's just call it that. So your final confession would be on you. So I'm really, you know, kind of weirded out by the fact that his confession in his notebook would be different than the confession that's, you know, digitalized and whatever other confession there may be. You know, it's hard to really fully grasp what's going on here right now because we don't have all of the details. All we know is there are other confessions and supposedly they're a little bit different. So I'm really hyper focusing on that point because why would they be different? And you know what I mean? I don't know. It's just really odd that Brian Laundrie's parents walked out there and they conveniently found him in like 10 minutes after people who are trained for stuff like this couldn't find him for weeks on end. So that's one thing that I'm really hung up on right now. It's something that I've been pondering all night because, I mean, it's not a super complicated thing, but it's like, it's kind of right there. Why would this be different? You know what I mean? Because I would think that I would try to stick to basically the same story. And if we are already questioning if Brian really wrote this confession, I don't know. It's a weird situation, y'all. And honestly, I don't think that we will ever fully get to the bottom of what happened here. And I really don't rule anything out at this point. I don't rule anything out because ruling things out is what allowed this situation to get to where we're at now. Like, one thing I've learned from the Gabby Petito story is just expect the unexpected. Expect the unexpected. The last thing you think, that's the thing that's probably the most likely to happen. Expect the unexpected when it comes to this story. And I'm so glad that I've stayed on top of this story and that it's paying off because now we're getting this information. We got more information yesterday than in weeks of me covering the story as they were out there going through the swamps looking for Brian. Like, we got so much yesterday. And now a lot of people who are covering this story, they're dusting themselves off. Me as well. Got to dust off our shoulders. And we got to hop right back in it because it looks like we're going to be spending some more time with this story now. The investigation into this situation, looking into the situation, it's not over. Just when we thought it was, it looks like we're hopping right back into this Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie case. And I cannot wait to find out what else is going on from this other information, what was said in this letter, because, I mean, can we just talk about the elephant in the room? If Roberta is writing Brian Laundrie letters to so-called help him, I just don't know how it's just, I don't know. All I'll say is this. I don't want to speak up too soon because we don't know what was written in this letter for sure. But I'm really questioning, damn, man, Brian Laundrie's parents are lucky that they didn't get locked up. If she was really writing Brian this letter, and there's some stuff that she says in this letter, she's lucky she's not in jail right now, in my opinion. But you know, people feel differently. It is what it is. I want to know your thoughts about this, though, down in the comments below. While you're down there, hit that thumbs up button, hit that subscribe button, drop a super thanks, share this video. It's really important, guys. YouTube has changed the way they look at channels now. They used to want a lot of comments, and then they're like, no, we need a lot of likes. Now they want to know that people are sharing your videos in order to view you as a worthy content creator. So please, if you have time, it's totally free. Share this video on Facebook, Twitter, social media, whatever social media platform you use, or hell, tell a friend about me. But as always, I'll talk to you all on the next video.